My name is Leo Martinez, and at 28 years old, I never expected to see my father again. 12 years of building my life from nothing had given me a beautiful home, financial security, and finally, peace. Then the doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was a man who had thrown me out at 16 to make room for his new family. Now he wanted something. Money for my step-siblings' college education. What happened next on that porch changed everything. Growing up, it was just my dad and me in a small rented house on the outskirts of Denver. We weren't rich by any means, but I never went hungry. Dad worked as a mechanic at a local garage, his hand perpetually stained with grease and oil. By the time I was 10, I knew how to fix a leaky faucet, cook simple meals, and get myself ready for school while Dad left for the early shift. Despite our struggles, we had a bond forged in steel and engine oil. Every Saturday was our day. We'd spend hours in the garage, working on his prized project, a beat-up 1968 Ford Mustang. He'd teach me about carburetors and gaskets, and tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. I believed him. I never knew my mother. Dad told me she left when I was a baby, unable to handle the responsibility. Her absence left a hole, but Dad filled it with enough love that most days I barely noticed it. We were a team, just the two of us against the world. Everything changed when I turned 13. Dad met Clara at the garage. She brought her immaculate luxury sedan in for an oil change, a vision of polished professionalism and success. She was a real estate agent with a confident smile and a portfolio of high-end properties. More importantly to Dad, I think, was the stability she represented. She had her own house in a gated community, an income that dwarfed his, and a life that didn't smell of gasoline and hard labor. The first time Dad brought Clara home for dinner, I tried my best. I cleaned the house and made the one fancy meal I knew, steak and potatoes. Clara brought me a book on architectural history, having heard from Dad that I loved to draw buildings. I thought she was nice enough. What I didn't know was that Clara came with her own family. She had 2 children from a previous marriage, a 10-year-old boy named Ethan and an 8-year-old girl named Sophie. Over the next few months, our Saturday traditions in the garage faded. Dad started spending his only day off at Clara's house. I'd tag along sometimes, sitting silently on a pristine leather sofa while they talked about property taxes and market trends. I felt like a smudge of grease in her perfect, beige world. By the time I turned 14, Dad was spending most nights at Clara's. He started talking about how wonderful her life was, how her house had a pool, how her job had endless potential. Our small, cluttered house, which had always been our haven, suddenly felt second-rate. The summer before I turned 15, Dad dropped the bombshell. Clara was pregnant. The floor fell out from under me. Dad was ecstatic, talking about getting a fresh start, about how Clara was thrilled. No one asked how I felt. As Clara's pregnancy progressed, she sold our house and moved us into hers. My new bedroom was a converted office in the basement. It had no windows and the air was always damp, but Dad insisted it was temporary. Ethan and Sophie were there full-time, their father having moved out of state. Our family of 2 had become a family of 5, soon to be 6. I tried to adapt. I helped paint the nursery. I kept my grades up. I did everything to show Dad I was still on his team, but I could feel him slipping away. At dinner, the conversation revolved around Ethan's lacrosse games or Sophie's ballet recitals. When I tried to talk about the architectural design competition I'd entered, Dad would just smile vaguely before asking Ethan to pass the salt. The breaking point came during my sophomore year. It was a weekend of the state-level architectural model competition. I'd spent months on my project, a complex, multi-level library design. It was my shot at a summer internship with a major firm. Friday morning, Dad casually mentioned he and a very pregnant Clara were going away for the weekend, a baby moon. What about me? I asked. Oh, you'll be fine, he said dismissively. By the way, Clara's sister's dropping her kids off in an hour. We told her you'd watch them until Sunday night. But, Dad, I protested, my voice shaking. The competition is today. I told you about it. Dad sighed, placing a hand on Clara's stomach. Leo, sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family. We can't let her sister down. Before I could argue, the doorbell rang. I spent the weekend building Lego towers and cleaning up spills while my dream of an in-township evaporated. When I tried to explain to Dad how much it meant, he accused me of being selfish. "Your priorities are all wrong," he said. "Family comes first." A month before my 16th birthday, I overheard them talking. "We need to talk about Leo," Clara said. "When the baby comes, we're going to need this basement space for a playroom." There was a long pause. Then Dad's voice, so quiet I almost missed it. "I know. I'll talk to him after his birthday." My 16th birthday was a Tuesday. I found a store-bought cupcake on the kitchen counter with a card. Inside was $50 and a note, "Happy birthday, Leo. Love, Dad, and Clara." That evening, Dad sat me down. His expression was grim. "You're 16 now, nearly an adult," he began. He explained that with a baby coming and my obvious unhappiness, it was time for me to find somewhere else to live. Where am I supposed to go? I whispered. "You're smart and resourceful," he said, avoiding my eyes. "You'll figure it out. You have 2 weeks. I spent those 2 weeks in a daze. With nowhere else to go, I called my best friend, Marco. His parents, the Garcias, were horrified. The next morning, Mr. Garcia arrived in his pickup truck. Dad awkwardly handed me an envelope with $300. "Call me when you're settled," he said, before retreating inside. It was the last time I would see him for 12 years. Living with the Garcias saved me. Mr. Garcia, a contractor, saw my drawings and took me under his wing, teaching me the practical side of building. Mrs. Garcia helped me get legally emancipated. I worked every hour I could, saving for college. My hard work paid off with a full scholarship to the University of Colorado's architecture program. College was a blur of classes, part-time construction jobs, and ramen noodles. I graduated at the top of my class and landed a job at a prestigious firm in Denver. I poured every ounce of my pain and determination into my work. I saved every dollar, haunted by the memory of having nowhere to go. My design started winning awards. At 25, I took the biggest risk of my life. Along with 2 friends from college, I started my own firm, Martinez Design Group. We focus on sustainable, human-centric architecture. Our big break came when we won the contract to design a new community art center. At 28, I was the principal of a thriving firm. I had just finished building my own home, a sleek, modern structure of glass and cedar that was a culmination of all my dreams. I had Isabel, a landscape architect who understood my need for roots and stability. My life was finally, beautifully, my own. And then the doorbell rang. He looked older, tired. His work-worn hands seemed out of place in the clean lines of my foyer. "Leo," he said, his voice raspy, "you've done well for yourself." I led him into the living room, the heart of the home I had designed. We sat in silence for a moment before he started talking. Clara's real estate business had taken a hit. They'd had more kids after the first one, twins, now 10. Ethan and Sophie were ready for college, but their education funds were gone. "We saw the article about you in Architectural Digest," he said, finally getting to the point. "Clara and I were thinking maybe you could help out. For your siblings. Family helping family." The rage was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. "Family," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You want to talk about family now? After 12 years of silence? After you left me homeless at 16. His face crumpled, and for a second I saw not the man who had abandoned me, but a man in deep, profound pain. "It wasn't like that, Leo." "It was exactly like that." I shot back. "No," he insisted, his voice cracking. "You don't understand. Clara, she gave me an ultimatum." I froze. This was new. This wasn't in the script I had played in my head 1,000 times. "The day we decided to move in together," he continued, staring at the floor, "she told me it wouldn't work with you. She said you were a reminder of my old life, that you wouldn't fit into the new one she wanted to build. She said it was either you or her and the baby. And I was a coward. I was so terrified of being alone again, like after your mom left, so I chose her." The air left my lungs. He hadn't kicked me out for a playroom. He had traded me. He had traded his own son for a chance at a new, shiny life, and that life was now falling apart. The request for money wasn't just about tuition. It was a desperate Hail Mary from a man whose foundation was cracking. I stared at the man who was my father, and I felt something shift. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a bitter, aching pity. He was weak. He had built his perfect life on a rotten foundation, and now it was collapsing in on him. "I will help," I said slowly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He looked up, his eyes filled with a pathetic glimmer of hope. "I will set up an educational trust for Ethan, Sophie, and the twins. It will pay their tuition directly to the schools. You and Clara will never touch a cent of it." His face fell slightly, but he nodded. "But there is one condition," I added. "Anything. You will sit all four of them down, with Clara in the room, and you will tell them the truth. Not the story about me being difficult or you needing space. You will tell them that you were given a choice, and you chose to throw your 16-year-old son out of your life. You will tell them that this money, their education, is funded by the son you abandoned." His face went pale. He understood immediately. This wasn't an act of generosity. It was a reckoning. I was forcing him to tear down the facade of the perfect family he had sacrificed me for. "Leo, please." "That's a deal," I said, standing up. "Your children get their future, but they get it along with the truth. That's my price." He left my house that day a broken man. I knew he would take the deal. He was too desperate not to. It was a bittersweet victory. I would never get back the father I had as a boy in that garage. Our relationship was a ruin beyond repair. But as I stood in the living room of the house I had built, I realized I hadn't just offered him a deal. I had laid a foundation for my own peace. The truth, however ugly, would finally be brought into the light. My story would not be a secret buried in the basement anymore. It would be the undeniable cornerstone of his family's future, a powerful, painful lesson in the true cost of betrayal.